Hello, everyone, and welcome to Professional Branding, Understanding and Speaking to Your Qualifications. We are very excited to have you join us today and talk a little bit about how you can build your professional brand and what it takes to make sure that that looks great, you can talk to recruiters professionally, and really make yourself stand out amongst the crowd. Before we get started today, wanted to give you a little bit of logistics. Make sure that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, that you share those within the chat or the Q&A. We will be able to get to those near the end of the presentation. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started here. I wanted to first introduce Maureen Weber. She is our Senior Career Services Advisor. Maureen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a little introduction.
Sure. I'm happy to be here today. I'm excited about our presentation. I've been with Rasmussen for 8 years, and I have been in career services for 5. So very excited to be here and looking forward to the presentation.
Excellent. And my name is Melissa Wagner. I'm a Career Services Manager here at Rasmussen. Have been with Rasmussen for over 11 years, and prior to my role here, had been working in recruiting and human resources as well. So have taken that experience and turned it on its head. So really excited to speak to a lot of these innovative and they're not new, I guess, so much as just making sure that people understand how to quote unquote work the system, I suppose. So with that, I want to introduce Kayla Koopman, our distinguished guest, who can tell us a little bit about her role and what you do.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here as well. So like Melissa said, my name is Kayla Koopman. I'm a talent sourcing strategist for Hospital Sisters Health System. So I actually work with 15 hospitals throughout our system, which are in Illinois and Wisconsin. I have been in this role for about a month and a half. Previously, I was the campus recruiter for HSHS for Wisconsin. So I worked with a lot of college students, high school students, community organizations, you name it. But I have been in a recruiting role for probably just under 7 years. So I've looked at a lot of resumes and I've talked to a lot of candidates over the course of those 7 years, as you can imagine. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun today. It's gonna be a good discussion.
And if you're gonna have get advice from anybody from the field, Kayla is your gal. She knows what she's talking about. All right, so our agenda today, we are going to, as I mentioned, talk a little bit about professional branding, what it is, what the benefits are, and how to build your brand, and then we'll go through a Q&A. And the Q&A can be, if you have a question for in general for career services or for Kayla, or related to branding or not, you can definitely share that in the chat. We will probably not get to every question, but we will try to get to as many as possible. And we'll definitely make sure that you have access to our contact information if you'd like to connect with us after the presentation today. So a little bit about professional branding. When people say that, people kind of might stare at you blankly and say, what are you talking about? So just to give a little bit of clarity as to what that is, Jeff Bezos, as probably everybody knows who this person is at this point, the founder of Amazon, he says your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So whether you're aware or not, it can both add and detract to your marketability as a candidate, depending on what you're putting out there, whether that be social media, whether that be your resume, whether that be your online application. So every little bit says a lot about you as a candidate. So you want to make sure that everything is pulled in tightly and that your professional brand, it's being judged for better or worse every day, no matter what it is that you're doing. So it will set the tone for you as a candidate. So The old adage, it says you can never get a second chance to make a first impression. It's really true. So making sure that you're putting your best foot forward and that you're building that digital and professional footprint is going to be important to you in a job search.
Yes, so absolutely. It's really that brand is how do people perceive you and what makes you you? What is unique about you? So the brand refers to elements of your expertise and skills that really sets you apart from other professionals. It's your authentic story, and that authenticity is so important. It can, part of it, it can be your education, your actions, your personality, your values, your experiences, both in the working world and also any other experiences that you have. It's your uniqueness. And according to Forbes, it's really establishing and consistently reinforcing who you are and what you stand for in your career and life. And it can be something as simple as, are you bilingual? Do you have a unique skill set? Maybe you were a registered nurse and now you're getting a paralegal certificate. So how can you combine those two skill sets to find this new career? So it can be a lot of, maybe you studied abroad or worked on a special research project. So it's all that part of who you are that we really want to show to the employer, to show your value of having that unique and needed skill set. So Kayla, as a recruiter, what do you believe constitutes a professional brand, and what ways can our audience put themselves out there to be noticed?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's very true, Maureen. Your professional brand honestly is so much. Like your brand starts, I would say, when you're going through the application process as an individual or as an applicant with an organization. Your brand starts as soon as you apply. Your brand starts the minute you hit submit on your job application. So that really can be what's on your resume, if you have a cover letter, which by the way is not recommended. Well, I don't want to say that, but it's not required. So your brand can start as soon as you hit that apply button for an organization. So there are people in recruitment then that will review your application. They might go out on social media and see what's going on and see who you really are. So there's so much truth in that. Like your brand is more than what's just on paper, but that's definitely how it starts. So make sure you're portraying yourself in a way, in a positive way, in a way that you want other people to see you. So that can go back to making sure that everything is your grammar is correct, your spelling is correct. That kind of says a lot for your brand too, and that leaves a lot of information just about yourself. That tells a lot about yourself, about how neat you are, how organized you are. If you respond to your phone, if you pick up your phone when we call you, if your phone goes to voicemail and your voicemail is inappropriate, that says a lot about your brand too. So it can be positive or it can be negative. So just be aware of everything that's out there too. And I think something important that also leaves a lot about your, or says a lot about your professional brand, is have a LinkedIn profile. I think that's something that's huge, and it's a really great resource. So if you're a job seeker, absolutely get a LinkedIn profile out there. There's so many different organizations that you can connect with. There's so many different people and companies that you can connect with. Obviously, I'm not a job seeker, but I still get job emails usually twice a day from LinkedIn. So it's a really great resource, and there's a lot of good information out there. So that's a good place to start, I would say, building your professional brand too, especially from a social media standpoint.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kayla. And really, as a job seeker, this is an opportunity as you're creating this brand to reflect on what you have done, how your education and your transferable skills can help the employer get the results they want. And the way you express those values in, conversation, in writing, and on social media, as Kayla mentioned, is all part of that brand. And quite simply, when a decision must be made between qualified candidates, your brand is really going to help you stand out from the competition.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, Kayla, overall, what are some things that people get wrong when they're creating a brand? What is the negative impact of a bad brand?
Oh gosh, that can be a big question. So, as far as leaving too much information out there about yourself, I keep tying this back to social media, just because that is so important. So, I'll just tell a little story, kind of about my new position. So, what I am now is I'm a talent sourcer, which means that I go on the internet and I look for candidates all day, and I look for people on social media. So, just be aware of what you have out there. So, I don't want to say that nothing is private, but I will be honest, you can find just about anything out about anyone on the internet. So just be aware of that. I don't want to scare you, but that's very true. Um, so just be aware of what's out there. If you have a Facebook account, make sure your privacy settings are as strong as they can be. Make sure your phone number is not out there, your email address isn't out there. Make sure you have I mean, it doesn't have to be, Facebook doesn't have to be a professional looking picture, but don't have anything that you wouldn't want your grandma to see out there. And the same goes with like your cover photo. Make sure that's not, it doesn't have to be professional, like I said, on Facebook, but just make sure it's something like maybe the sky or maybe your family or something nice, nothing inappropriate. The same goes, I know like TikTok is really big right now too. So just be cautious of what you're putting out there as well. Just check your privacy settings again. And if you're looking for a job, I mean, you don't have to have your privacy settings on forever. But if you're out looking for a job, just turn them on for a couple weeks. Turn your privacy settings on for a little while. Just clean up your stuff for a little bit. That will help you for sure in the long run, because when it comes down to it, like we said, that might be where we go to make a final determination on a candidate. It is true, I promise. But yes, absolutely. And when you're applying for a job, like we talked about before, like in on your resume, um, make sure that it's neat, make sure that it's clean, and you have appropriate information on there, and you have all of the information that really says who you are. There's a lot of I guess dispute about how long you put information out on a resume for. I will say that if you're applying for a job in healthcare and you have 10 years ago you worked as a CNA and you're not really sure that you should put that on your resume, absolutely. If you have any transferable skills or customer service skills or any healthcare experience, or even in any sort of customer service job, make sure you put all of that information on your resume, because it is important. And when it comes down to it, if you're hired, that might have something to do with how much you get paid. So make sure that you're putting relevant and appropriate information on your resume too.
Thanks, Kayla. Wow, those are some great tips, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of that further in the webinar. So really great tips for our job seekers. On the flip side, having a solid professional brand really differentiates you as a professional. It makes you a much more confident and empowered job seeker, because it really gives you the opportunity to solidify your message. And that confidence, as Kayla mentioned, will spill over to everything: networking, interviewing, salary negotiation, as Kayla mentioned, and your career in general. When you're able to really see and articulate your career wins, that your strengths, your skills and expertise, that makes all the difference in about how you feel about yourself and how you portray that value to others, and especially to employers. The candidate that receives an interview request or a job offer is the one that is best at communicating how they meet the unique needs of that employer or hiring manager. A good solid brand is also going to assist you in finding a position that's a good fit for you, because it's really a two-way street. You have to be comfortable with the position. The employer has to be comfortable with you. So as you are creating your brand, you will be identifying your skills and your strengths that define you as a job seeker. The brand will also help you target your job search for companies and positions that are really suited to you. So really lots of great benefits for that professional branding.
Absolutely. So let's take a little walk around how to build a professional brand. So when you think about your brand, we've heard both Kayla and Maureen mention it's who you are as a professional and what you bring to the table. It doesn't have to be everything that you've ever done. We don't need 5 pages. What we need is what is relevant to the job. So whether it's your LinkedIn profile, whether it's your resume, what is it that you want to be known for? What is it that you want to project out to others, out to hiring managers, out to other individuals who might consider you for employment? You want to tailor your story to that job, that industry, or that company. You really want to hone it in, because I think a big mistake that not everybody, a lot of job seekers make, and Kayla, you can stop me if I'm wrong here. I can only speak to what I've seen as both a recruiter myself as well as a career services advisor, is people are very general when it comes to the information that they put out there. And I think it's mainly not, it's not in an attempt to, oh, I'm open to everything. It's more so that, oh, I just don't know how to focus on what it is that the employer wants. So that big indicator, that first step, is going to be self-assessment and really reflecting what are your strengths, what are your areas of growth opportunity, looking at job descriptions, assessing your skills, your competencies. And a lot of people get stuck on how to articulate their skills and competencies. It really is reflective of what the industry that you're going into. So you want to make sure that you are looking at job descriptions, that you're doing research and you're seeing what it is that the employer is looking for and how much do I mirror that. We obviously don't want to lie about it. We're not encouraging you to just throw everything out there and say, oh, I'm going to just type whatever that is matching the job description, which is also a no-no, by the way. If you don't put in the time and the effort, if you can't speak to your skills, if you can't speak to how you are right for the role, don't expect the employer to know how you're going to fit in that role either. If you can't articulate it, it is going to be hard for the employer to connect the dots too. So again, really self-assessing and looking at what are the commonalities for the positions that I want in my job market? What is my end goal? And what is it that I need? What is it that I'm missing in relation to that in order to get that goal? So if I'm getting an associate's in accounting and I'm seeing that in my job market, a bachelor's is really where I need to be in order to get an accountant role. That doesn't mean that my associates is worthless. It means that I have to evaluate what are my steps to get to that accountant role. It means that right now I might look at bookkeeping. Right now I might look at doing something in accounts payable or accounts receivable. And then as I can get to that point where I can reach my bachelor's and gain that, it's taking that to the next level. So again, that self-assessment, making sure that I am articulating what I have in relation to the role, and internalizing what it is that I need in order to get to my ultimate goal. Sometimes it's not going to be a jump right to that end goal, which we all want. We all want that instantaneous satisfaction, right? Is I got my degree and now I'm going to have my dream job. Sometimes that happens and it works out that way. But sometimes we miss the steps that we have to take in order to get to that dream job. So self-assessment is going to be a big part of that. The other thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is being clear and consistent. You want to make sure that you're removing fluff and again, highlighting what's relevant to your career moving forward, ensuring that your message, what you highlight, is consistent, not only from your resume, but you heard Kayla talk about social media and LinkedIn, specifically LinkedIn. It's almost as detrimental not to have social media, not to have a digital footprint, as it is to have one and have the wrong things. Because if they can't find you, again, Kayla mentioned, sometimes that is the deciding factor is, can I find you? How are you connected? Are you engaging in professional associations on LinkedIn? Are you connecting with other professionals? It's not necessarily always, a lot of people assume that when they don't get a job, they get that token HR response, right, Kayla, from the, oh, we went with a candidate that better fit our, and they get the, the vague response. And they always assume that means it's their experience. I'm going to clue you into something, everyone. If you get a call off of your resume, it's not your experience, because they know what your experience is. If you get an interview from your resume, which is your resume job is to get you the interview, then it's the articulation and being able to be identified as a professional, and that you can articulate what that is to you and how you fit the mold. So it's going to be important that you're being clear, consistent within all of your platforms, whether that be your resume, that's social media, anything else. If you put together, if you're a marketing professional or a design professional, your profile or your portfolio, you want to make sure that that is consistent and speaks to your highest skills. You want to put your best foot forward out there in all mediums. And the lack of attention to detail and the lack of, I want to say, overall presentation matters as well. So Kayla mentioned earlier is making sure that it's professionally formatted, making sure that it's not just typed on a Word document, that you have some type of formatting in your resume, and that you can articulate your skills and what your education brought you, as well as your experience and how that fits their mold. The other thing that is going to be important when you're building a brand is defining and targeting an audience. You want to make sure that you're researching your industry and the companies that you're interested in. You want to make sure that you're engaging with those individuals. It's not always about what you're putting on the paper. It can also be about being all over the map with regards to the information that you're putting out there. So if you are looking to work as an accountant, then you should be highlighting what's relevant to the accounting field, what transferable skills you have, what core skills you have related to the field, what software and technology related to the accounting field that matter. You want to make sure that you're engaged in some professional association of some kind. And it doesn't need to be a lot of them. A lot of people go on LinkedIn and they start just engaging in every networking group that they can possibly get into. And that's not the point. The point is to get your name out there and get your brand out there, but it is to target companies that you have an interest in, whether that be, you know their name and you know somebody that works there, which is great, by the way. Having that foot in the door is always great, because a lot of times it is about referrals in recruiting, right, too. So I know a lot of employers, they are asking and they promote referrals internally to their employees. So if you know somebody at a company, even if they're not in the role you want to be in, that's still an enrolled for them to be able to refer you. But you want to follow companies of interest. You want to follow them on LinkedIn, see who works in positions of interest that you have. So who are the people that work in accounting at that company? Who are the people that hire the accountants at that company? Make sure that you're following their process. So you'll always get the, have you put in an online application? Most companies have them now. You want to have that done. Yep, I applied for XYZ position and now I'm going to connect. Hey, I just put in my application. I am really excited about the opportunity. This is what I really love about your organization. Please let me know if there's any next steps that I can do to put myself in a better position to be considered for the role. These are the things that you want to consider. You want to make sure that you're defining and targeting who, where, and how you're networking. And it just has to be consistent and, again, targeted. You don't want to apply and engage in every networking group possible. But if you are engaged actively in just one or two, that can make all the difference. And that leads to the final one, is embracing that networking, making sure that you are getting to know other professionals in the field, because again, that is that helpful hand when you are actively job searching. You don't want to, on the flip side, approach somebody you don't know and ask them for a favor right away, right? You don't want to reach out on LinkedIn, hey, you don't know me, but I really need a job. Can you help me get a job? You want to make sure that you're playing it cool, you guys. You want to make sure that you're reaching out and saying, I'm really interested in being an accountant. I know that you're an accountant here. I really love the mission of your organization. Could you connect with me? I would love to hear how you got your start in the field. What networking groups do you belong to? I would love to hear any tips or advice you have for me. Those are going to be the people you want to connect with. And also, if you are still taking classes, or even if you've graduated, you want to connect with those individuals that have worked in the field, and specifically those people that are instructing you, especially related to your core classes. If you're a nursing major and you are getting your RN, you're getting your LPN, whatever the case might be, you should be engaging and having really close relationships with the people that work in that field. They're going to be the best people to not only network with and help give you the best advice in your career, because they either are currently working or have worked in the field. So they're your first go-to people with regards to building your network and your brand. And the most important thing with building a brand is being authentic. Now, all of this stuff that we've talked about, it is about practice. It's about learning how to do it. So you're not going to just go into an interview and in one shot be able to do it. That's why preparation is going to be important. The research is going to be important, but it is important to be you. You want to bring your personality into it, but you just want to remember what it is that you want to say. What do I want to articulate when I go into this interview? What is it that I need to make sure that they understand about how I'm fitting in for this role? It's the worst thing that you can do is go in there and wing it, right? You don't want to, even the most seasoned interviewers, people who are professionals, they can get it wrong. So you need to be able to articulate it. It does take practice. It takes a little bit of work. And if you put in the work, you'll see the results.
That is
So a little bit
good information. I'm sorry. I just have a couple of things that I just want to throw in there.
Sure. Go ahead, Kayla. Please.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, absolutely.
I was
That's why we have you here.
I'll let you finish, and then I'm gonna bug in. I just want to go back to the networking point. What Melissa kind of said about networking. Okay, so I literally have found candidates to work with me or work for our organization at the grocery store in line. So you never know who you might see at one point in time. So you never know. It doesn't hurt to spark up conversation sometimes.
Oh,
But I will also add, especially if you're in healthcare and you're doing your clinical rotation somewhere. So just know that when you're doing your clinical rotations at a hospital or some sort of healthcare facility, your interview is really starting then. So just show up, be yourself every day, be professional, ask questions, be appropriate. Because if you want to work at that organization, you might not know it, you might not realize it, but they're watching very closely at what you're doing during your clinicals. So your interview is starting the minute you walk in the door of that hospital.
yeah, you want to treat it like a job, right? It is your first job. And y'all, I'm telling you, recruiters talk. And recruiters do move from industry to industry. So they do talk and they do share stories, they share information. So if there's anything out there in a negative light, it might be found out.
Yeah, not to scare you, but I do have recruiter friends at some of our competitors. So we talk in between organizations too.
Right.
Not to scare you, but just know that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, your interview is starting far out. And if you're not in healthcare, maybe you have an internship. So your internship could be your networking moment. So definitely get out there, do as much of those things as you can. And I go back to, I talked with a lot of high school students about job shadowing, or even college students about job shadowing. That is so important. So it really gets your foot in the door of an organization that maybe you're interested in, or you just want to see what they do. We've had students come in to do job shadows before with like sweatpants and sweatshirts on, and like I shouldn't have to specify like, okay, make sure you wear scrubs or wear business casual if you don't have scrubs.
Right.
So just keep that in mind too, because when you're walking in the door, again, that's when your interview is starting, whether you realize it or not. Because those people will remember you. The managers and the leaders will remember you. And your colleagues that you're working with might go to their manager and say, hey, I worked with Betsy today. She was a really great nurse, or she was a really great job shadow. I think we should hire her. So just know that everyone talks. So just keep that in mind too. Sorry, I don't mean to scare you, but
Yeah. No, I
No,
think it's really good information for them to have.
Yep, and that networking piece, we tell those stories all the time. It could be in line getting coffee. It could be at a football game. It's those are those key networks that you should be reaching out to as you are job searching. So
yeah, I have another kind of a funny
okay.
story. I'm sorry, really fast.
Yeah.
I was so I live in the Green Bay area. Just last fall, I was at a Packer game, and I was on like a shuttle, like a Packer bus or whatever. And we were on our way back home. And on the bus, I was talking with another person that went to the game, and I think she was from Milwaukee. And I ended up talking with her, and here her daughter was in nursing school and was graduating like the following year. So I actually friended her daughter on Facebook because I didn't have a card on me. Obviously, I was at the Packer game. So I just friended her on Facebook, and I ended up meeting with her that fall. And she's graduating next spring. So she hasn't graduated yet, but I've met with her a couple of times, and I've met with her at career fairs and things like that. And I've set her up to talk with recruiters. So networking can start at a Packer game. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love those stories because that's just the best way for someone to learn how to network. And as Melissa mentioned, preparing. That's all preparing her for that interview that she'll have when she finishes her program. So thanks for sharing those stories. We'll get a little bit more into the nitty gritty for building the brand. So on paper, those are going to be your job search documents. So your resume, cover letter if required, a portfolio, or any papers or projects you bring to an interview or that you're preparing for your job search. So Kayla, for you, what are the foundations of a good resume? And when you review an incomplete or a sloppy resume, what is your perception of the candidate?
I mean, your resume doesn't have to be super fancy. It doesn't have to be on pink paper. It doesn't have to smell good. It doesn't have to be that. I prefer to view resumes that I know there's a lot of back and forth about, oh, your resume needs to be on one page. When I get a resume that has a lot of information and it's all jam packed onto one page, it's really hard to read. For one, it kind of is a little overwhelming. So I prefer, if you have a lot of information and a lot of good information, a lot of good work history, going back to your skill set, don't just say you're a team player. Tell me a little bit about a time that you worked on a team, you worked on a project team. So be a little more specific than just team player, good teammate, or something like that. Don't just
Highlight
put
successes.
those
Yeah.
yeah, don't just put those little keywords on your resume. Put a good sentence. That's fine. But just put a couple. I like to see if you have a job that you have listed on your resume. Have I usually say like 2 to 3 bullet points underneath that job. You can have 4 if you want. Just with some key duties that you did at that job. So it doesn't have to be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be a whole page of information that you did at your job. But just a couple bullet points is perfectly fine. And as far as like font goes, keep it general, Times New Roman, keep it basic. That's okay. I direct a lot of people to like Microsoft Word has some pretty good templates that you can at least start from for resumes. you can go there and at least get something going and just fill in the blanks essentially. Make sure your formatting is better, is good to look at too. Don't have like tiny little margins and don't have really huge margins so your words are all squished in. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy, but I mean, it has to be. You have to be able to read it and understand it, and like we talked about, double, triple check your spelling, your grammar, things like that are so important because if I look at someone's resume that is, like Maureen said, not quite complete and they're missing a lot of information. Maybe they have the organization's number or name wrong in the objective statement. I'm probably just going to disregard that and just move on. Maybe if I'm really desperate, I might look for something. I might look into it. But if I have 10 applications, so 10 resumes to look at that day, and one doesn't have the name correct in the objective statement, I'm probably going to pass, honestly. So just be aware that just those small details are important. So double check, triple check, have someone else look at your resume and just make sure that it looks good to them too, and that they can understand it, they can read it. Have a friend or a family member just look at it and just, yep, that makes sense. That looks good.
Yeah, awesome. Great, again, great tips for our job seekers for those documents, resume, cover letters, portfolios, and more. Please, we encourage you to be concise and have it be relevant to what you want to do moving forward. Maintain consistency throughout your documents. Make sure you're always truthful. Again, going back to that integrity and authenticity. And as Kayla mentioned, presentation matters. A well put together, visually appealing resume and other documents go a long way in an application and job search. So we did talk a little bit about the digital footprint and online. So again, you mentioned that you do review social media for candidates. Again, which sites do you look at? And I know you've talked a little bit, but do you have some additional suggestions for things that you've seen both positive in social media and then some negative things you've seen on sites?
Positive, I think my mind always goes to like LinkedIn. If I'm looking for someone for maybe a professional position, that's probably the first place that I'll turn is LinkedIn. I don't think many healthcare professionals are on LinkedIn. I wish they were. But I don't think there are a ton out there, but there are some really good organizations that you can get involved in LinkedIn. But when you create a profile and you connect with a whole bunch of individuals, maybe people you went to college with, or instructors that you know, or people that you used to work with, when you can there's a way that you can ask for referrals and recommendations from people on LinkedIn. So when I am looking through and I see some really good recommendations and some really good referrals on someone's LinkedIn profile, whether or not it's a job related to what I'm looking for, that says a lot about you. That says a lot about your character, that you can get some good referrals from people. And just to have that posted online, and it's free, it doesn't cost anything. So I know there's a lot of dispute too about like, do I need to pay for LinkedIn? No, you don't need to pay for LinkedIn. don't get LinkedIn paid.
Yes.
Because it's a lot of money that you don't need to spend. So just know that too. But I would say I use LinkedIn and Facebook probably the most. I might go out on specific college job pages on Facebook. I might look for certain traveling job boards on Facebook, community job boards on Facebook. So get involved in those things because you can see a lot of job postings out there too.
Oh, wonderful. That's great advice. Good. Yeah, so we will encourage you to review your digital footprint, as we've all mentioned. Do a social media audit, Google yourself, and see what pops up. Make sure, as Kayla mentioned, you have a professional image. Remove anything embarrassing. Activate those privacy settings, but do remember that's not a catch-all. And then Kayla, and we would tell you the same, create a professional LinkedIn account. It's so important for job searching and for networking. So really, really important to do that. And then in person. So Kayla, you did mention, but again, talk a little bit about when does the interview start for you? And then can you talk to us a little bit about what you've witnessed in an unsuccessful interview?
Oh gosh, I've had so many experiences with unsuccessful interviews. Um, the minute you walk through the door, like we talked about with for clinicals, or if you do a job shadow, your interview is really starting right then and there. You're leaving an impression. So hopefully you're trying to leave a positive impression. But I have had people walk in. Okay, so the first thing you should do is overdress. Overdress for your job interview. A lot of our interviews are going to be our job interviews are going to be in person on site. There might be some times that you have a job interview that is on Zoom. I have done interviews on Zoom before during the pandemic where the candidate is in their bedroom and they have their bed in the background and their bed is a mess. It's an absolute disaster. And they have clothes all over their floor and it's just a train wreck. So my mind during the whole interview was like, wow, is this person going to be like a mess on the job? Or are people going to be constantly picking up after them? Or what's going on here? Did their mom not make their bed today? Like what's going on? So that is literally what I was thinking about during the whole interview. So that's unfortunate because maybe it was a really good candidate. They just portrayed themselves in a negative way and left a bad impression right off the bat. And as far as like an in-person interview goes, so I recently had someone who it was actually a pretty new college graduate. I think he graduated in May, and he was an IT major from a local technical college. And he had come to me and he was like, oh, I really want to get in for, or he applied for an entry level or for an IT role. And he was very entry level, didn't have much experience. And I had a really good conversation with him. And we got him for scheduled for an on site interview with the hiring manager, who also doesn't hire a lot of new grads, doesn't take a lot of new people. So really liked those experienced IT professionals, and this kid really wanted this job. So I told him, I think his name was Sam. I don't remember for sure, but Sam, we'll call him Sam. I said, Sam, one way that you're really going to impress this manager is if you show up to your on site interview in a suit and tie. You're going to blow the socks off this guy. And like I said, overdressed. So he walked in the door, met with him, had his resume, had a really great interview. And the manager, when he came to me afterwards, made note of that he was wearing a suit and tie for this IT position. He was like, wow, I can't believe that he showed up in a suit and tie for this interview. That's really great. And long story short, we hired him. We offered him a job and he's doing really great. So just simple little details like that. You don't have to go out and buy a suit and tie for a job interview, but if you have something and you really want to impress someone, that will do it. I promise.
Wonderful. I love that story. That's awesome. And we would encourage you the same. Put your best you forward. Whether you're in the classroom, as Kayla mentioned, come prepared, come on time, be engaged, volunteer for a project when the instructor asks for help. Same with the clinicals. That's, as you all both have mentioned, that's really going to be key going forward. And get the most out of it that you can by being an active, engaged participant. If you're new to a field or want to break into a new field, volunteer. That's a great way to find a mentor, great way to get experience, and just a great way to build your brand. We talked a lot about networking, so we definitely want to encourage that, and interviewing. Make sure you're polished, as Kayla said. Appearance does matter. Also, how you carry yourself. And again, if you know your message and know your skill set and expertise, you'll be much more confident, and that's going to show in the interview process. So make sure that you have a firm handshake. Make sure you're making eye contact, good posture. All of that will go a long way in an interview. Character is as much a part of your brand as your work history and your job search documents. And then always we encourage you to inject your personality and your professionalism in the right areas when appropriate. And then our final point is your brand is going to evolve as you do. So continue to reinvent your brand as your career progresses. We want you to create a brand that really lets you shine.
Absolutely. So lots of great information. We dug deep into a variety of topics, and I mean, we could talk about this for hours and even not chip away at all of it, but we'll start getting into some of the Q&A questions. And really, I wanted to emphasize some of the pieces that you all were talking about because I mean, Kayla, going back to your story about the Zoom interview and even social media, and in today's world, everybody's like, that shouldn't matter. What I have on social media is my personal life. What I have in my bedroom shouldn't matter to you. It's on Zoom. Um, it does matter because it is taking you into account as a whole person. You don't, I, you don't even your personal life affects who you are professionally. It's just the way it is. So if you're throwing out information out there on social media that could potentially hurt the employer's brand, they're not going to have any part of it. So as much as possible, you want to be able to reflect and articulate who you are and how you will make a positive impact to the company. And if it's out there, it's out there. Social media is out there. And if you have it out there, it's free game for people to see it. So privacy settings, yes, we talked about that. But like Marina mentioned, it is not a catch-all. You can comment on somebody else's page who you are friends with. And even if you're not friends with somebody else, but that person is a friend with them, they can see it. And what if that person is a hiring manager and you are throwing out profanities or you're throwing out something? It matters. It matters. And how the type of effort that you put into your resume, that matters to employers. When they see a sloppy versus a well put together resume, they know that people are putting the time and the care into it that they should be doing it, that they should be doing. And that is all a part of your brand. You want people to look at you and say to you, or about you when you're not in the room, right? Wow, they know their stuff. They know what they're talking about. They can, they're always consistently on time. They meet their deadlines. They are the expert. So if you're going to go to anybody on this next project, you need to go to them. That's what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room. So having that is going to be very important and being able to do that. Some questions that came in, and I know we got a lot of them here, so we'll try to get to as many as possible. If we don't get to your question, we do have our career services advisors, especially if you're a student or alum of Rasmussen. You can definitely reach out to your programmatic career services advisor. They will definitely help you with your individual questions or conversations that you'd like to have and articulate related to your specific niche, but we'll try and answer as much as we possibly can here. And for those of you who are joining us from the community, I definitely encourage you to reach out to your local workforce center or even recruiters from companies. They are definitely more than happy to, as we know they're busy, everybody's busy, right? But I'm sure that a lot of them are really open to have conversations about what it takes to put your best foot forward. So with that, some of the things that had come up previous in our chat was, how do I make myself sound more confident in my abilities? So we talked about the practice. Kayla, can you give us a little bit of insight as to what it is in an interview? What does confidence sound like to you?
Confidence, especially with if you're maybe someone that's new to the industry, maybe this is you're applying or interviewing for your first job. Like Melissa said, practice. So grab a friend, grab a family member, grab someone from career services. Practice. You can definitely tell when someone is interviewing for the very first time and they didn't practice. They're stumbling all over their words, and when you ask them a question, they say, "Oh, I don't know. I don't have an example." Okay, well, you have to work with me here. Something else that I think is a good way to build your confidence is to, I think someone put it in the chat, is to think of specific examples. So as you're going through the interview process, I don't, like we talked about, I don't want to hear that you were a team player. Okay, that's great. Tell me about a time that you were a team player. Tell me about a time that you worked on a project with some of your colleagues or some of your classmates. So if you don't, again, if this is your first job and you don't have specific work experience or work examples, think of things that you did in the classroom or some things that you did at school. And I like to say too, like maybe if you were in high school and you were on a sports team or you do a sports team, you can think of examples from there too. So think outside of the box, because we really want to see and visualize you in a specific situation. We want to hear you tell your story. So think about it that way too.
Yeah, I think somebody in the chat mentioned the STAR method, right? So the situation, task, action, result. So you want to be able to articulate what was the situation and the task at hand, what actions did you take, and what was the end result. So when you're talking about being able to articulate, those are kind of the steps that you want to follow when you're talking about, you know, showcasing what it is you bring to the table. And most questions that interviewers ask you will be that type of question in nature. It will require you to be able to share and articulate a time you've had a situation or a time that you learned something new or had a conflict or something. It is going to be always situational, usually more often than not. So the behavioral interview, they're trying to get down to who you are as a person and look for trends and consistencies.
Yeah,
So
I like
always,
to think of, oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I like to think of an interview as a conversation. So if you think about it kind of from that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should ease you a little bit, but that kind of should go into like, it should help you think of ways or different ways that you can be very descriptive and talk really about situations, like we said.
Mm-hmm. 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 So let's see, what other questions do we have here? Let's see. In healthcare, is it okay to be wearing scrubs? Scrubs to interviews, Kayla, even in healthcare, direct
Um,
patient care?
I would probably not wear scrubs to an interview. If you're going on site for an interview specifically, you should wear business casual. You should dress up a little bit. Yes,
Right.
definitely.
Mhm. Absolutely. Okay. We had some questions about LinkedIn and adding it to your resume. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. You should always be sharing that information wherever you can. So if you have a social media profile or a portfolio, you should be definitely sharing that information.
Yeah, definitely.
How do I start looking for companies who would want to hire me? We have that question.
Um, well, depends on what your skills are. Depends on what
Right.
kind of company, what you want to do.
Mhm.
LinkedIn is a good place to start. Like we talked about, join different groups on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Social
Mhm.
media is helpful from that perspective. Absolutely. Indeed is a really good tool also. So we use Indeed. So you can go
Okay.
out on Indeed and you can search any position or skills that you want, and it will help you find a position too.
Yeah. I think that's part of the research part of it, right? Is it's a lot of times you want to be able to put yourself out there on social media like LinkedIn, or even with Rasmussen, we have resume books where employers can search and find you, right? So they will come to you if you put that information out there, but you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, right? You need to go out and find them too. So I think the first thing that you might want to do is make sure that you are, you know, searching what are the top healthcare employers in my area. That might be a search if you're looking for healthcare. What are the top accounting firms? What are the top design companies across the US? Those are the types of searches that you might want to start with, and then narrowing it down like we talked about before is you do want to be, you do want to target your search and make sure that you're really going after who is the top in the game and who interests you as an employer versus the other way around. how do you launch a new career in a new field? Maureen, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So again, as we mentioned, that networking piece is going to be really important. Make sure you are making connections in that field. Volunteering, job shadowing. We talked about conducting informational interviews. So if you're trying to move into a new field and you have a specific company in mind or a job title in mind, use LinkedIn to find those professionals and then very professionally and politely connect with them and ask if you can have, 10, 15 minutes of their time. You can do it through Zoom, you can do it in person, however it works for the two of you, but connect. And I think Melissa gave you some good examples of questions you can ask. How did you, what education level do you have? What does your day-to-day look like? What top skills are needed in this position? So it's not that you're asking for a job. You're really trying to find more out about either that specific position or that company. But it's twofold, because maybe if you make a really great impression on them, as Kayla mentioned, they may know someone hiring, or they may refer you to someone else, or they may remember you 6 months down the road when they have an opening. So all of those pieces, that research, that networking, that volunteering, job shadowing, that's all it's all work. It all takes a little bit of time and effort and the ability to prepare for it, but it will pay off down the road, because you will make those connections that hopefully will lead to a position in your new field. The other thing is, I think Melissa mentioned, be realistic in your job search. If you're searching for an accountant, but you don't have that level, you're not a CPA, you don't have that level of education, you may have to start with a different position and work your way up. So again, lots of pieces, lots of preparation to do, but it all does pay off if you start small and one step at a time. Also reach out to us in Career Services. We're happy to help you take some of those steps. And also, as Melissa mentioned, if you're a community member, your workforce development is a really great resource as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be that paid experience like we talked about earlier. It's that job shadowing. If you are an employee that's looking to move internally, I have a lot of graduates that are in that position where maybe they're in a customer service or an administrative role, and I want to move into the HR department in my company because I want to stay here. I have my credibility and I have my, great benefits and stuff like that. They just want to take that next step in their career. It is about taking on that next level of responsibility. The networking piece. If you're internal, you already have your foot in the door. So go talk to those HR people, go talk to those recruiters, and go talk to them about their day-to-day. Do a job shadow, or ask if you can take on a project or responsibility. Take that additional piece in, because a lot of people worry about the experience. It's not always about the experience. It's about how you can articulate the skills you have along with how you think you can be successful in the job. So it's not always about the experience, but the more you can add to your resume, such as I took on a human resources project, even though you're not in an HR role, that's huge. And that shows initiative. So when employers see that, they really love to really talk to those people, and it can do wonders for you, especially for that internal movement, career changing, etc. Somebody asked about, let's see, do I bring my resume to an interview? Yes, 100%. Because a lot of time applicant tracking systems, they have the recruiters when I don't even know, everybody has their own process, right, Kayla? So some of them will print it out. Some of them will keep it in the applicant tracking system. It depends on the applicant tracking system they have. Sometimes it might not come out right. So I would always recommend that you bring a copy of your resume with you, and I would always ask ahead of time what the plan for the interview is. Who is it you're going to be interviewing with? Because a lot of times you could be surprised that you're going to be in a panel interview. You're going to have 3 people interviewing you at the same time. Whoop! Wow. So now you need 3 resumes, and you need to make sure you're communicating with every person that's asking a question, and you need to be prepared for that. That can throw people for a loop. So make sure you're asking questions before you even walk in the door. because
Yeah.
you, again, want to be prepared.
Yeah, and make sure you bring a notebook with you too. So something we didn't really talk about is ask questions during the interview. If we get to the end of the interview and you don't have any questions for me, I'm going to be very concerned. I'm going to be like, okay, this person doesn't really want this job. So when it gets to, hey, do you have any questions for me? Ask questions about the organization or the position that you really want to know. Ask me. I like it when people ask me questions about, Kayla, what do you like about your position, or what do you like about HSHS? So it kind of turns it around on me, and I can tell you what I love about my organization. So think about that too. So bring a little notebook with you. Write down some questions on your notebook, just to remember.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. What is the hiring or what does the training process look like? What is the review process, the annual reviews? Do you have annual reviews? All of those are really great questions. Resume tips to pass the applicant tracking systems. Woo. So we talked about resume. We talked about how it doesn't need to be pink, and it doesn't need to have, please don't put your picture on your resume. Don't put your picture on your resume. It really just needs to be the nuts and bolts of what you bring to the table. It doesn't need to be fancy. The thing I would stay away from with templates on social media when using them is a lot of them have text boxes and drop downs and all of that sometimes doesn't shift well into an applicant tracking system. They might not be able to read it. They might not be able to read it well, or things might get fumbled. So just take care in the type of software that you're using. We at Rasmussen, we have the Hiration platform where we have samples, and it is compatible with applicant tracking systems. You do want to have it in a PDF form when you do upload it into an applicant tracking system. I know that was a question that somebody had mentioned or even asked in the chat as well as I was going through. You want to make sure that it stays in the format that you want it to be in. So again, that presentation piece, right? So making sure that you did have that downloaded in a PDF as well. Okay. I know we are just over 1 o'clock here, so I definitely want to be respectful of Kayla's time and everybody else's time. I know we had so many more questions, so please definitely reach out to your career services advisor. You can reach out to career services at careerservicesonline@rasmussen.edu. We'll get you to the right person. Or if you're a student or alum of the university, we are on our student portal under resources, career services. We have access to all of that information. So definitely reach out to us. We definitely want to have a conversation with you about how we can make your job search easier and help you build your brand. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kayla, for joining us, Maureen, for helping us put this together for Rasmussen. And good luck as you continue to navigate your job search and your career.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.